Hi friends, I want to show you something that I have decided I wanted to try my hand at, and I want to show you the different parts that I've got going here. This is the first time that I personally have ever rendered tallow. Now what is tallow? Tallow is the beef equivalent of a pork's lard. So beef fat is tallow once it's rendered, and pork fat is lard once it is rendered. Now, we start off with a great big hunk like this, and I went to my neighbor who has a small butcher shop and who has allowed me to have some of his tallow, but the big piece of fat that you see here is called kidney fat. And why is that called kidney fat? It's because each one of these big hunks that I am in the middle of this one has a beef kidney inside of it. Now I intend to use these kidneys to cut up to feed my cats and my pigs, and as I said, I'm in the middle of this one, and if you can see this is what I've done so far. So this is about 2.5 beef kidney fat tallow pieces. So this is a big fat cleaver that you need to be sort of careful with, but makes the rendering of it significantly easier than just with a knife. Now sometimes you cut into the kidney there. I don't want to cut into the kidney. I want to keep the kidney intact to make it a little bit easier. And then after I've chipped the pieces off, then I'm going to crumble it. Now how could I crumble fat? I believe that these have been hanging dry aged beef, which makes the fat quite a bit more dry. And then I'm pulling off these little external pieces that are kind of like wax paper. The entire piece is encased in a great big piece of this like wax paper. It's a lot like this. These are pieces that I pulled off. So you see it's very wax papery. And again, I'm just using the cleaver to take the fat off the outside, and I'm trying to keep the kidney part intact. You could use a knife if you're doing this as well. When I first started doing this, it was quite a bit easier because I had significantly bigger pieces of fat. So I'm down to the kidney portion, and you have to be really careful not to take your finger off with this. And so why am I doing this? You can render tallow for use with cooking. I hear that it makes the absolute best French fries of any other kind of oil, cooking oil medium. So that's one purpose. You can use it for cooking fat the same way that you do lard. Another purpose is that you can turn it into body products, and it might be for face cream, or for baby's butt cream, or for healing cream. You can add other oils to it that are beneficial. Sometimes it's rose oil, rose absolute oil for your face, which is supposed to be an anti-aging property, or you could use lavender, and that's good for any kind of skin issues that you might have, any kind of rash or anything like that. Today's project that I am working on is not any kind of body product. I intend to render all of this tallow into the fat for pint jars that I'm going to then use a wooden wick and make tallow candles. And I do intend to add some fragrance by using some clove oil or some cinnamon oil, or a combination of those, maybe some orange oil, to make the house beautiful. And these also, you don't have to add any kind of scent to them. You could just pour them all and consider them emergency candles for if your power goes out or anything like that. But if you wanted to add some fragrance, you can do that. Now I will say that once this fat starts to cook down, and notice again I put it in a roaster pan, I'm going to take this down to my stone cellar, and I'm going to put it in, and I'm going to use it low and slow. Cook it very, very slow. And it should turn to a liquid, and from time to time I'm going to go down and skim off any hard pieces. pieces that have separated from the fat, and it might be some tiny piece of meat that's left on the fat, or it might be a piece of the wax paper part, but those are the things that I'm going to easily be able to skim off, and when all of it turns to liquid, then I will strain it through a strainer and fill the jars. I'm also told, again, this is my very first time to do it, so I'll catch you up in part of the process as I'm doing the next parts, but that there is less than pleasant smell that's going to come while it's cooking. But the great thing about that is that that scent that might not be so pleasant, like fat cooking, does not transfer over to the final rendered product that ends up either in the face cream or in the candle or anything else. The scent just dissipates, it's gone, and then it is a scentless white balm of sorts. And if I cook it low and slow and pour it into these jars, it should solidify into almost a completely solid candle. So I'm glad to be taking you along, and like I said, I will catch you up on the next step. So it's the next day, and you guys are down in my stone cellar, and this functions sort of like a bit of a workshop for me. I have some drying flowers and some storage and a number of other things, but I want you to see what the tallow has rendered down to after having it in this roaster on 200 overnight. Now there are still some pieces in here that do need to continue to render, but I believe I can show you what the process looks like to make a candle. So I'm starting with just a clean pint jar, and I ordered on Amazon these little wooden wicks. You can get them other than Amazon as well. So I've placed the wick in the little metal holder. I'm going to peel this off so there's a little double-sided sticky dot, and I'm going to do my best to get this right in the center of the jar, and you want to make sure that you get this right the first time. And that's close enough there. So I have the wick that's going to hold itself in place in the middle of the jar. I'm going to place the jar on this paper plate. Scoop the liquid. And do my best to get it in the center, straining it to make sure that we don't have any chunks in the jar itself. There might be a neater process for this, but it works. Now this tallow should dry and cool in a solid state. A little bit more. You can see why it's a good idea to have the paper plate underneath. Alright, I'm going to put the rest of the chunks back in because they still have an opportunity to render. I'm going to make sure that the wick is still in the center, and I'm going to add just a little bit of Nature's Oil fragrance. This is essential oils along with some other oils that cause the scent to stabilize a little longer than if I just used essential oils by itself. Now, it's not necessary to add scent to your tallow candles. You could burn them just as they are and they would be fine. And I think I mentioned yesterday that the smell of the fat rendering is not a great smell, but that smell does not translate to the candle once it is cooled. So we can look forward to a candle that is just a tallow candle with a little bit of fragrance oil in it. And this is going to function nicely as either an emergency candle or just a basic kitchen candle. I'll let this cool. I'll bring you back just a little bit later and we'll light it and we'll give it a test. Okay, so a little time has passed. We had put the jar with the tallow in it and the fragrance oil in it into the refrigerator. It is now pretty solid. I can't detect any scent of beef fat. I'm gonna take the scissors here and trim the wick to, let's see, probably about 3/8 inch long. And moment of truth. We're gonna light this candle. And we're going to see how it burns. I like the sound of the crackle. I don't know whether you guys can hear the crackle. I like the color. I'm sure that you could add additional colors if that was important to you. Again, you don't have to use the scent oil, but I like the fragrance that I chose. I used a cinnamon clove orange scent. And it smells delightful. I would say this is an absolute success. So, our first tallow candles.